The Cavendish experiment has been widely criticized by the scientific community because never in over 2 centuries since its creation has anyone been able to replicate it.
Hello, you beautiful bastards. I'm the Triggered Limey, and welcome to another episode of Wanker Wednesday. That's right. Once again, we are back on the topic of Flat Earth. Always good to check in with it every now and then. Let's give absolutely no applause whatsoever to Flat Earth's very own version of sleeping gas, Eric Dubay. And on that subject, I don't want you lot passing out on me, so I have decided to speed up Eric's voice by 50%. You're welcome. Now, the video that we're looking at today from this Hitler-loving twat is called Cavendish's Experiment Proves Gravity.
In 1797, Henry Cavendish, the British scientist, Freemason, and wealthy grandson of the Duke of Devonshire.
Do you think Eric slotted in the Freemason bit to be accurate, or do you think, as I do, that it was because he wanted to make sure that his viewers, who most, if not all, are conspiracy nutjobs, would immediately begin to distrust anything about Henry Cavendish and his experiment? I mean, why not also throw in that he was awarded Fellowship of the Royal Society of London, or that he discovered hydrogen?
Created an experiment which he claimed successfully proved the existence of gravity.
He claimed no such thing, you lying prick. Do you even attempt to do any of your own research before you decide to open your trap? And I'm not talking about YouTube University or reading posts from your fellow flirfs. Speeding up Eric's video reduced it to 1 minute and 47 seconds or so, and that's still going to be too long. But anyway, first, science doesn't prove things, Eric. It points towards the best theory given our current level of understanding based on the evidence at hand. You know how, like, all of our evidence points to the globe? And second, Cavendish's experiment was designed to determine the mass density of the Earth. He actually called it weighing the world, although it did still show that Newton's law of gravitation works.
Measured its constant.
To be honest, I believe this still gets argued to this day. However, going by the multiple peer-reviewed papers I've studied and the few I decided to brush up on for this video, he didn't do that either. It wasn't until about 75 years after the death of Henry Cavendish that scientists were able to use his experiment to actually determine the gravitational constant. But it is definitely because they used his experiment to determine this that people mistakenly attribute this to him.
And provided accurate figures for the exact masses of the Earth, Sun, Moon, and planets.
I don't recall that he calculated mass and density for the Sun, Moon, and the planets. However, I could be mistaken, because admittedly, my memory's getting worse and worse as I get older. If anyone knows anything more to do with this, or any other part of the video for that matter, please do let me know.
How did Cavendish achieve this quantum leap for heliocentric pseudoscience?
I really do enjoy it when a flurf uses the word pseudoscience. To other flurfs, it means some sort of science that they shouldn't agree with or believe at all. But to us, it just means science that is beyond the scope of flurf understanding. I fucking love it.
He fixed 2 large lead balls on opposite ends of a torsion balance and hung them from the roof of his shed. By watching and recording slight motions of the contraption via telescope through his shed window so his mass would not affect the reading, Cavendish claimed to have proven gravity.
So, as mentioned before, science doesn't prove things. And this is because it would be stupid to think of anything really as definitive when we know that our understanding increases over time. But as far as Newtonian gravity, I would say that he demonstrated it very well. Unless, Eric, you arrogant little twat, you can think of another reason and have then tested to verify your hypothesis. Also, I really do hope you're going to give a little more detail, for the rest of the video, because I'd hate for people watching to think that you don't have a fucking Scooby.
2 small lead balls were hung near the large ones, and any motion observed towards one another was touted as being the influence of gravity.
Touted as being gravity? He didn't exactly try to big it up, sunshine. I know that's what you want your sheep to think, that it was like an agenda he was pushing, but try to remain factual, yeah?
Now, the Cavendish experiment has been widely criticized by the scientific community because never in over 2 centuries since its creation has anyone been able to replicate it.
Never, he says. Fucking hell, Eric. For a start, it was repeated successfully multiple times in the 19th century alone, and is still replicated in universities the world over every single year. Again, stop trying to further your education by using YouTube, you plum.
Firstly, the balls simply do not always attract one another, as they must, for the so-called gravitational constant to be constant at all.
Really? I think that would depend entirely on your setup and its location. Again, it has been replicated successfully many times now.
Sometimes the torsion balance turns towards the balls, and sometimes away, as it is impossible not to give some slight tremulous motion when interacting with it.
This is why once you've built your apparatus, you limit or negate entirely all interference with the setup, but instead just observe it. Case in point, Cavendish observed it from outside his shed using a telescope in order to not allow his mass to interfere with the experiment in any way.
Henry even complained in his notes how often as he was performing the measurement, the contraption was still in oscillation.
I honestly don't recall reading this in his notes either. I think I'm going to have a read through the philosophical journal again. There was discussion on vibration in the arm, but that was accounted for to the best of his ability. And to be honest, he did an excellent job. There have been others that have repeated the experiment in locations where the movement of people and or vehicles caused tremors enough to have an effect on the experiment. However, in my humble opinion, Cavendish's experiment was extremely detailed and took anything that could be conceived of at the time into account.
Secondly, since his calculated force of gravity was 10 to the 39th power weaker than the force of electromagnetism, from which all material objects are composed, there is no control for the experiment, which can factor out and positively differentiate the alleged gravitational force from the known, stronger electromagnetic force.
Gravity is weaker than electromagnetism, but where the fuck are you getting this number from? Because I couldn't find it in any of his results. And it also looks like your understanding of numbers is about as good as your skill at research. The electromagnetic constant is 9 times 10 to the 9th power Newton meters squared per Coulomb squared. Now, as I'm a nice guy, Eric, I will save you trying to fry your little mind. 10 to the 39th power is a lot larger. I mean, the clue would be in one of them being to the 9th power and the one that you seem to think is smaller being to the 39th power, Eric.
In other words, the balls could simply be attracting each other through static electricity, a known force existing in all things, billions of times stronger than gravity, and impossible to control for the experiment.
Fucking hell, surprise, surprise, Eric actually does have a bit of a point here. Although one might not think it, lead can sometimes collect quite a bit of static electricity. And obviously scientists have to be extremely careful when it comes to possible sources of error when trying to perform a precision experiment. Of course, nowadays we understand electrostatics and are able to negate it entirely from our experiments. And as said earlier, the Cavendish experiment has been repeated many times all across the globe. I also noticed, you conning little fuck, that you said the balls could be attracting each other through static electricity. Bit slippery, I think, because you know your followers are going to watch that and want to take it as gospel. But again, when you say could, I mean, you're just showing that you haven't performed a single experiment to try and support or disprove your claim. That makes you a bit of a tosspot, and really, you've got no right to be talking about these fucking things.
Even though no one could replicate Cavendish's findings,
We can, and we do.
the experiment went down in history as a great success, and is still taught as veritable proof of universal gravitation in science textbooks today.
This is because it was a success. Now, I will give you something on the textbooks, because they often do say that Henry Cavendish did calculate the gravitational constant. This is poor research and shows that we are not infallible as human beings. There should definitely be stricter study when it comes to composing a physics textbook. However, as the Cavendish experiment itself was used to determine this, I imagine most students are going to be just fine. But I do tend to agree that correct history within science is of the utmost importance, and it is something that needs to be looked at a lot more. Of course, Eric may see this as an attempt to hide the truth from the masses, when it is simply a misunderstanding being passed onwards, kind of like him spreading flat earth. But anyway, Eric, you abhorrent, egotistical little human, I would say this to you. Part of trying to prove a model is trying to disprove the models of current consensus. We disprove flat earth on a daily basis in this community because flat earth is ridiculous. Yet, not once has a flat earther accurately disproved the globe or tried to replicate any experiment or observation that demonstrates our model in order to try and refute it. Why? Because deep down, you all know that you're full of shit. I guess that's about it for today. Congratulations on being this week's wanker, Eric. It's more than deserved. It's your fucking birthright. Please do consider checking the support links down in the description to help me grow my channel, and consider watching this video next. As always, I've been the Triggered Limey, and I'll see you beautiful bastards on the next one.
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name, check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain, I ingest, I retain, assess and I change, possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints, money, clout, and fame.